One of the people I love to listen to is Majid Al Amri, and you can follow him on Instagram. And I just love some of the gems that he drops every day. On a recent one that I heard, he spoke about how children and their confidence can be built if you just ask them for their opinion. So if a parent just says, "What do you think?" and tell them you make the decision gives them importance. Their body posture changes, their confidence gets boosted, he says. And he does this with his kids, and it's really enlightening when he talks about it. He says, let them decide and give them the confidence boost. Take them seriously, build a confidence in our children, letting them know that in the family their decision matters and will be taken seriously. It helps to build a leader who will create their own path. And he really encourages people to try it with their children, because we're living in a world today where the children's minds are being hijacked with all the exposure that they're getting to things that are very concerning, including their schools and the friends at school. And one day he says, we will not be able to make decisions on their behalf. So we must equip them on how to make their own best decisions. And I loved it when he said, let's make instead of saying, let's make a better world for our children, rather, let's make better children for our world. And all too often, I hear of parents' concerns increasingly every day amongst my friends that they don't want their kids to fall into the woke traps that we see today, where there's a stronghold on trying to confuse them, questioning their gender and all sorts of perversions. We need to protect them from that, but we can't because it's everywhere. So we must teach them how to think critically. And I, for one, think that that's something that every parent needs to step up.
Yes, I agree, but I see it also as a consequence of a total reversing of the traditional view of things, where older people are supposed to know better than children. Today, I mean, it's good to teach children how to be critical thinkers, but put them in a decision seat could be, in my opinion, something that is going over the line. Because by definition, children do not have all the information and all the maturity to make sound decisions. So it's good that they are asked their opinion, asked to formulate why they have this opinion, and then show them maybe they're missing some parts of the puzzle that would lead them to another opinion. I mean, empowering children that way, in saying that they should be in charge and they should be deciding, is totally, in my opinion, a new way of thinking that is aligned to the infantilization of the whole society.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a line, and I think he definitely does draw that distinction. Obviously, when you say allow them to make a decision, obviously it's not going to be something that's of a grave nature. It would be like, well, where do you want to go, for your free time today, or where shall I take you? You decide. And that was the example that he gave, that they were at a amusement park, and he said to his son, "You decide what ride we're going to go on next." And he said, "I saw the whole body posture of my son change." And he sort of like took and owned that decision, and he led the family to that next ride that he so obviously it was on a level that's more appropriate for the children. Definitely, I agree with you. But do you agree that maybe today more than ever, and of course always, giving our children faith-based values to compare life's decisions to is the best gift we can give them? So just by teaching them, for example, what is wrong and right by God's standards and not by man's standards, maybe we'll help them to keep them on track. Because what do we do to fight against even some of the teachers that are trying to indoctrinate this woke agenda on our children today in school?
I think children have always acted upon examples of their elders. So it is up to the adults to be role models. And children are very much, humans are gregarious beings, and they just imitate. Most of humans are probably imitating what they see around them and what they deem the right way, because it is the common way. And so I think it falls on the shoulders of adults to be the example. Um,
Exactly. But then what do you do when you have a teacher who's being the wrong example and the child is being exposed to that? So how does a parent try to do whatever they can to protect their child from being hijacked, from their minds being hijacked with today's movements.
And this is exactly the conundrum, because you feel like when you send your children outside of the house, when they come back, you have to undo a lot of the damage that's been done and is out of your control.
Yeah, because they genuinely don't know the answer on what is wrong and right. I mean, they're learning, they're developing. They can, in my opinion, turn to a higher belief set, which is perhaps where we should be a little bit more stronger in the house to teach them, that comes from a sound ideology. In our case, being in a Muslim household and me growing up with Muslim parents, I was taught a certain ideology, and it helped me tremendously to know my Muslim values. I inherently knew what was wrong and right on some levels, of course. It helped me to avoid the pitfalls like alcohol, for example, or dating, or peer pressure on, doing drugs or doing something wrong or keeping the wrong friends. Because of the way my parents were raising me, I kind of had this alert system inside me when I knew that something or someone wasn't good for me. And I just wonder if that's even more critical today than ever, to really condition our kids at home to learn their faith-based values and understand the importance of God and what God wants from us, than to just outsource that to teachers who, in many cases, can be enemy number one if they're teaching our children the wrong things.
Yeah, and this boiled down to the role of parents versus the role of school. Traditionally, until recently, and before the governments took over the educational system, education, which comes from a Latin word ducare, which is to guide, was really the family's role. The school had the role to teach content, but the recipient and the way and the moral values, etc., were dealt with within the society and within the family. Now, it seems certain forces within governments are taking over even the role of educating, meaning formatting brains according to certain needs or perceived needs of the society, basically to be obedient to the current ideology that unfortunately is going away from sound values.
Yeah, so again, wow, that's scary, because it sounds like agenda-based narratives again that we're being exposed to. And of course, now we're talking about our children being exposed to. And that's a really scary world to live in, because they're being taught that some things are right when they're clearly not right.
I agree. Many people solve this by homeschooling their children, which becomes more and more illegal in many countries.
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, we live in a certain society, and there's exactly this conditioning that goes both ways when people have values, and the values promoted by the people in charge of the society are counter to this ideology. There is a battle of conditioning. Children, by definition, until they can think of themselves, and I think traditionally we put it around 7 or,
Yeah.
At least puberty, they are submitted to conditioning.
Yeah.
Families can set an example.
Yeah.
Children will do their experience, and we must not forget that a child is not like another child. A child is a developing being that is delivered into this world as a person. Each one, when people have several children, they can be very different from each other. You have children who have a tendency to be more rebellious than others, some others more obedient, and the same education in these two children will lead to different results. Some children, they want to do the experience, they want to break rules before they face the consequences. It's a terrible trial for parents who want to avoid this. They want to protect them from going into bad experiences. But some people need to go through bad experiences. And the way I see it is that the parents give the good example and a safe place to come back.
Yeah.
If the child has to go into bad experiences, he will still have this memory of a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he can come back. There is a home. There is a home of these values that
But
are solid and sound.
it has to go a little bit further than that today, I believe. I believe today it has to go to the point of equipping the children. Okay, I agree. Give them a safe place, give them as much of the best of your wisdom as you possibly can, help them to develop to be their own thinkers. But there's a little bit more which is when the kid is out there on his own, to be able to decipher this is wrong and this is right. I think if I look back and reflect on my childhood, maybe one of the things that could have been done a little bit better is instead of being told, do this, it's best for you, maybe it could have been better for me to understand why something to do or not to do was better for me. I think a little bit more of a conversation around that. At least for me, I feel the way I was, my mind worked, that would have really helped me as a child. I think what really did help me that was done well was that I had characters in my mind that were made as role models for me. So in my case, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was really defined to me as, the epitome of goodness and piety and a good human being. So when I was told to follow certain things that would be beneficial because he did them, until I was given a personal relationship with him, I was then equipped with this idea that, okay, what would the Prophet do in cases like that? It wasn't always something that was sort of, within my reach to do. But whenever I did do it, I felt that was beneficial. So maybe even mention a real life example to the benefit of what to do and what not to do will stick in the kids' minds. It stayed with me up until, my current days. So I do think that it's impactful.
I agree. Most humans are driven by admiration. They are driven by the role models they are proposed. And what has been happening over the last few years is that all great role models have been put down and replaced by heroes that are, at the end of the day, fake heroes. The star system is promoting as examples people who, when you scratch the surface of the marketing, have terrible, terrible lives and usually end up very badly. And proposing the hero model, which is, you want to resemble someone or you don't.
Yeah. And when you're being forced to look up to the wrong type of a role model or with the wrong characteristics, that's dangerous.
It is because, again, developing human beings, they want to follow an example.
Yeah.
And they want to follow an example that is admired, because everyone is looking for something good at the end of the day, And this is why the character of the Prophet and the Sahaba is so important to share and to propose as a model.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. And I say this only because I was raised with an Islamic value system, and I'm so grateful for it, genuinely. And it's possible that Islam is attacked so much because it's a path to overcome the trappings of the system. So it's a threat to any narrative that is trying to abuse us and our children. And maybe that's why there's such a perceived sort of negative spin in the media, because it could be done by design, because it can be a threat. If someone starts taking on the prophets as their role models, or really, really starting to reflect on what God wants us to do and not do, that could be problematic for the people that really want to design you through their narratives instead.
Yes, I agree. Taking the Prophet ﷺ as a role model is a way to be absolutely free from any influence that would be surrounding us. And astonishingly enough, when you study his life and his character, it is astonishingly modern and kind and totally adapted to what we need. It's a solution, right?
And it happens to be a solution for all times, which is really the real litmus test for wisdom, right? Wisdom is age old. It doesn't have to change. That wisdom applies throughout time, because that's what human beings need is proper, authentic wisdom.
Yes, and we are so fortunate to have all of this very well documented in the Sunnah, because, of course, his ways was an extreme example set for humans, but it was not so different than the wise ways of the ancients. But today, all of this wisdom has been replaced by ideologies that go towards more and more pleasure-driven with short time frames. You get your pleasure, but whatever the consequence in a year or 2 years or 10 years. So if we want to go back to what is a human morality that is tried and that delivered its results, we have the documentation through the Sunnah. Of course, the problem I see is that some of the Sunnah considerations have been put together and, reflected upon by people in a different period of time, like 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And the principles of the life of the Prophet could be reassessed according to our time. So think texts of great masters and shuyukh derived from the principles of the life of the Prophet, and what he did discriminated what was proper to, let's say, the culture of his time from what was a universal moral or behavior of a proper human being.
Yeah.
They separated the two, but then the solution or their accounting of his behavior was mixed with their own culture and their own time. So we should be able to do this work of, again, concentrating on what were the principles.
Yeah. And applying those to our lives.
Remove everything that is cultural.
Yeah.
Because most of these people did live around the Mediterranean. And most of their consideration was very tainted by their culture, which is not bad because we are all humans and we all live within a culture.
Right.
But we must absolutely separate the principles that are universal from the cultural implementation of these principles. So following the way devised by a very great intellectual or shuyukh of Egypt of 500 years ago is probably not the way to go because it doesn't apply to what we live today.
Right. And that's what's really interesting about the Sunnah, which are the lessons that we learn from the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we look at those scenarios and those examples and those wisdoms, and somehow we know that once they're applied relevant to our times and to our lives, you kind of start building your own system by which you inform your life decisions. And those that aren't aware of how dangerous and scary life has become for children especially, and the hijacking that's going on of the attempts to get at their minds and their characters and their development, just look at pretty much all the big brands out there that are despicably low in their moral compass. I was disgusted actually when I was surfing some videos to really understand a little bit more about, what child experts have to say about development and the challenges of today. I came across that Balenciaga, for example, is using children in their latest ad campaigns in very disturbing imagery. What place kids have in promoting handbags is a mystery altogether, but their inappropriate messaging around kids is deeply sick. I just want to share with you a small clip by Tucker Carlson, who actually talks about it, and I was really quite blown away. Let's listen.
But it's not just the sexual mutilation of children in high school. This is part of a larger trend. And the trend is this: adults crossing the line, and it has always been a brief line, into deep involvement with the sexuality of children. That has always been, and must in a civilized society always be, the most forbidden thing. It's considered unacceptable even among prison enemies. But now it seems to be growing in its prevalence. Consider the latest ad for the clothing brand Balenciaga. This was just uploaded on Instagram. As you can see, the photo they're using to sell their products features a young girl holding a teddy bear in a bondage outfit. That's the point. The photo shoot also contains this image with several documents. Most of them aren't visible. You can see when you zoom in, and of course the point is that you see it, is a reference to a U.S. Supreme Court case called Ashcroft versus Free Speech Coalition. That case struck down a law against kitty porn. What is it? Well, it is what it appears to be. It's an endorsement of kitty porn, of child pornography. What else could it be? We wanted to know. So we reached out today to Balenciaga to get their explanation, and they didn't respond. So we're going to have to take that on face value and ask, where's the moral outrage? We have an entire industry in this country comprised of moral outrage merchants. If you've ever been on Twitter, you know what we mean. Really, an entire sector of our economy is devoted to attacking people for falling short of the mark. And here is a high-end retailer promoting kitty porn in an ad on Instagram, and nobody notices it. There's no boycott. There's no front-page New York Times editorial against it. And of course, Instagram let the advertisement run, endorsing kitty porn. And by the way, if you have an alternate explanation for what this was, let us know. A child with a teddy bear in a bondage outfit, and a Supreme Court decision striking down a kitty porn law displayed on the table. What is that? Are we jumping to conclusions? Don't think so. It is what it appears to be. It's right in your face, and no one's saying anything.
Oh my God. I'm incensed by this. I am so livid. And this is what's happening in our world.
Well, I'm not surprised. Let's say the effort to bring down all taboos one after the other. It's not that you attack a taboo front hand. You make people unsensitized to this thing. And it has been many years where child pornography and pedophilia has been attacked in the media like a very bad thing. But it was presented to people again and again and again and again until, it's like these strategies against allergies where you cannot stand peanut butter, but they will expose you to peanut butter until you don't care anymore. And I feel that you have a very strong reaction. But many people will say, oh, but it's so prevalent, so what's the big deal? And then it's one step further to making it normal.
It's so despicable. Are there any parents out there who are still letting their kids on social media? What about video games where they know they have their pick of a captive audience in your kids and they want your kids to play video games? Are you not aware? I mean, what about TV and movies where the most disturbing imagery is snuck in and the parent doesn't even know? Get your kids off of all of these things, people. It's going to destroy them. It's time to take back your children and raise them so that you don't outsource this to video games and television and social media and school teachers. Oh my God. I never thought I'd have to say that. And it's really sad. Or even friends for that matter. I mean, you're right. Where's the moral outrage? He said it. Why, are these things still being tolerated? Why are we tolerating celebrities that support or promote Balenciaga or any of the major brands out there who are committed to perverting us and our kids? I mean, can everyone please stop having anything to do with the Kardashians, for example, who are dripping in Balenciaga and all these other despicable brands that stand for nothing good? Just refuse to even hear their name again. They're such big proponents of so much that's wrong. Kim Kardashian, for one, is one of their biggest mouthpieces for Balenciaga. It's time to clean up. Why don't people see that?
Well, as you know, we live in a time of great fitna. And so it's a concept, a fitna is a concept that people are tried in order for what is hidden to be manifested. So everything, all of this is under the guidance of Allah, He's Al-Muhaymin. We must never forget that. It is just showing you where things are and what things are. And
it's showing me, yes. And I pray that it's showing the parents who have a responsibility to intercept now.
Yes, and it comes back to the notion of community. Because if you just forbid your children to have access to social media, you will harm them in a different way because they will be and feel as outcasts and socially awkward people, And you cannot keep them in a house totally isolated. So you need to build relationships and communities of like-minded people who see the danger, where children can express themselves and not be in another community that is driven by other values, right?
Right. I don't even know how to word this, and I don't know how to say this, but I remember there was a time, and even now, there was a huge outcry that by disproportionately highlighting gays and trans repeatedly in the way that it's being done will lead to the sexualization of children. This was said over the years, and many laughed and rolled their eyes. And look at what's happening right before us. It all has to be stopped. It's despicable. And what's our role in this? How do we make it happen?
Well, again, we come back to setting an example and speaking, the truth as much as we can, as the prophet advised. If you cannot stop something with your hand, speak against it. And if you cannot, at least be clear in your heart that it is wrong. The thing is, the consequences of all of this will be shown in many years when it will be too late for many victims,
And it's true what you said. I felt so helpless when I saw this, when I heard this. The only thing I could do was I took to my email and I wrote the CEO of Balenciaga, Cedric Charbit, and I could only find one email address that seemed relevant, which was a shareholder's email address. I'm sorry, at Kering, and so it's called the email address is actionnaire@kering.com. If you go to kering.com, you can look it up and find it. And I CC'd Business of Fashion, the publication that just loves to tout all things Balenciaga and all the other brands that are very guilty of wrongdoing, but they don't seem to ever highlight that. So I directly copied Imran Ahmed, who is the CEO and the founder of Business of Fashion, because I don't know what else to do. So I wrote the following message, and I'm awaiting a reply, but I do understand that there's been a lot of outrage, and I encourage everybody to write to these people. You must write to the CEO of Balenciaga, expressing your disgust, and even Imran Ahmed of Business of Fashion, who never seems to ever pick up stories like this. I don't know why. So this is what I wrote. Attention, Cedric Charbit. This is the CEO of Balenciaga, and Imran Ahmed, who is the head of Business of Fashion. You must take full responsibility for Balenciaga proactively stooping to one low place from another. This practice, we know, is common knowledge, and yet again, you take the lead with your pedo-perverted mind. I and billions of people around the world find it despicable that you are using children in your ads, let alone to make them subject to your sick pedo persuasion. Making them hold teddy bears wearing bondage gear and showcasing papers that are ruling out child porn. You people are sick, and billions will continue to stand up against you. The entire company and the work of Business of Fashion is also complicit and will remain so until they publicly reprimand and denounce Balenciaga in every way on their platforms. We name Imran Ahmed complicit in Balenciaga's perverse offenses against kids and anyone else who has given this sick brand any exposure or support, and now remain silent on their attempts to promote sick abuse such as this. There are many people talking about this matter online. Here is one short clip out of the videos and podcasts exposing Balenciaga. And I put that same clip that we just heard with Tucker Carlson. On behalf of the many concerned parents and decent human beings out there, we demand from Cedric a strong retraction, apology, and denouncement of your ads and behavior immediately. And we demand that Imran do everything possible to publish expressions of disgust against Balenciaga's actions on Business of Fashion and other publications he has influence over. Do the right thing for a change. And I signed off. I do want to note that Balenciaga, and it was pathetic, the statement that they put out there after facing a lot of backlash, where they basically distanced themselves and they said, oh, it wasn't us. It was, I think they, if I'm not mistaken, blamed it on the set director. And I know for a fact, and many people know for a fact, you don't even have to work in the fashion industry to know this, that these brands don't let anything through without checking it with a fine-tuned tooth comb themselves. So there is no way Balenciaga didn't know. So their pathetic response is not good enough. And we must stand against them, and we must stand against these brands, and we must actually just stop giving them any kind of attention or business. Stop buying it, people.
I think that's the way to go.